So dear friends, we welcome you at the Translation Summer School Winter Edition webinar. As you know, we'll speak about audiovisual translation, a very interesting and highly attractive topic. So today we invited an expert in teaching audiovisual translation, Professor Jorge Díaz-Cintas. He's been teaching audiovisual translation for years and is the founder, director of the Center for Translation Studies at University College London. As he is an author of numerous articles and books on audiovisual translation, this is the best possibility for you to start learning audiovisual translation ever. Professor Jorge Díaz-Cintas is known to many as one of the most prominent figures in the world of subtitling. He is former president of the European Association for Studies in Screen Translation and member of transmedia and drama groups. And what is especially important, I want to highlight it, is that Professor Jorge Díaz-Cintas combines teaching, research, and freelance work, and tries to keep abreast for the ever-changing industry, which is a rather rare case in academia, where, as you may know, not many professors are practitioners in the world of translation. So we are sure that even those of you who are audiovisual translation professionals will learn something new today. Please write your questions to Professor Jorge Díaz-Cintas in the question and answer section at the bottom of the screen, and he'll answer them at the end of the event. And now I welcome my colleague Lesya Ivashkevich to give more info about today's and tomorrow's events.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to see you all this evening. And first of all, I want to thank to our partner in this event, to Michael Kleineberg and his organization, German Academic Exchange Service, for the support in this webinar. Thank you a lot. And just a few words about how are we going to work today and tomorrow. So today, Jorge is going to introduce us the basics of AVT, and share his experience exactly with translation. And tomorrow we are going to concentrate exactly on methodology and teaching AVT. So tomorrow's class will be more practical and will be interesting exactly for those who are going to teach audiovisual translation and work on preparing your own courses on AVT. And tomorrow in the morning, we are going to send you the link to tomorrow's session. And now let's start. And Jorge, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Lesya, and thank you also, Alexander, for the invitation to be here today with all of you. I know we've known each other for a while, and we've been meaning to organize something, and now we've managed to crack it. So I'm delighted to be talking to all of you. As Lesya has clearly put it, today I'm going to be making a general introduction to the field of audiovisual translation, and tomorrow I'm going to be focusing a lot more on the didactics and how to explore this in the classroom. Now, my angle is going to be throughout. I'm going to be bringing in ideas on how to explore and how to do things in the classroom. I know some of you might be professionals, students as well. So I'm trying to reconcile all the interests in the presentation. It's a little bit challenging, but I'll try my very best. I'm going to be exposing you as well to some software, and I'm going to be showing you how to operate in the new environments that have been recently created in the cloud, and you might be able as well to practice with it. Now, because the seminars are today and tomorrow, we're not going to be able to practice during the seminars, but I'll make sure that you can have access to these platforms, and I'll give you material, also guidelines that you can use to practice with the software. Okay, I will also make available my 2 PowerPoints. Today's PowerPoint will be released at the end of this session, and then tomorrow's PowerPoint will also be released at the end of my class, or my seminar. I'm going to share now my screen. Okay. And let me see in here. So this is the PowerPoint that I have created now for you for today. And let me see if I can I'll show the video panel so that it doesn't seem that I am just talking to myself all the time. So I can see a couple of people here. And I would like I'm very happy for anybody to be asking questions whenever you feel is necessary. I'm not It's a bit challenging, as you might know, just keeping an eye on everything, videos that I've got here, my PowerPoint, the people also in the videos. But please, if Lesia or Alexander, if you can keep an eye on the questions coming and you feel that they are pertinent at a particular moment, don't hesitate to stop me and
Sure,
just tell me, Jorge, can you stop there? We've got a question, and I will try and answer that
sure.
question there and then. Let's try to make it as dynamic as possible
Mhm.
and within the limits of this. For tomorrow, today, I'm going to be more talking, and maybe at the end we can have a little bit of time. But tomorrow, I'm planning to leave at least half an hour for questions and answers, and we'll try to make it dynamic. So if there are things that I haven't touched on my paper, on my two desert presentations, please feel free to ask as well tomorrow. And I think you will be given access to the platform with your videos and your mics, and we'll try to make it a little bit more dynamic. So if today you feel that you've left out, don't worry, we can catch up tomorrow. Okay, so here we go with audiovisual translation. Those of you who know me, and thank you, Alexander, for the introduction. I'm originally from Spain, so hence my accent when I speak English. And I am much more of an expert on subtitling than some of the other areas in audiovisual translation. So I will be slanting in my presentations to the field of subtitling, though I'm going to be touching on everything that is available these days in audiovisual translation. I've been living in the UK a long time, and always in London, and always in the south of London for some particular reason. I didn't plan it to be that way, but I've always been in this city over 33 years now. And this is what I've developed my career, professional, but also academic. We're still very lucky, and we'll see what Brexit brings down the road. But London has always been one of the main hubs for audiovisual translation. And that's what has allowed me to be in touch with many people in the field and many companies, and create good synergies with all these people. There's always been, from my perspective, a misunderstanding, a traditional misunderstanding in the way we have considered or categorized audiovisual translation. You've got people, big names in translation, Mary Snell Hornby, Susan Bassnett a few years back, where they started theorizing about translation studies. Their understanding of audiovisual translation was always sort of similar to literary translation. And you can find in some of the analysis that they do and in the way that they want to tackle this area of translation as if it was literary translation. And you can fully understand why they went down that route, because audiovisual translation becomes to be as a need for translating films, and films were considered to be much closer to literary artifacts, books, theater, than to technical or medical translation. So that's why audiovisual translation in the beginning, it was always the translation of films. And you've got many articles and chapters of books discussing it from that perspective. Most of the things that we've analyzed traditionally are films or TV series, but very little has been done, for instance, in the area of documentary translation, corporate videos. We know now that the European Union, the European Parliament rather, has just launched a unit, which is the unit for subtitling and voiceover. It's very, very new. They are creating still the area, and it's going to do many things. They're going to do films as well from the LAX festival, but they're going to be doing other types of films, other types of audiovisual material. So audiovisual translation is not a genre, is not the translation of films, but is a medium, and it covers two dimensions: is audio and visual. And we know now that through audio and visual, we can transmit anything we want, whether it is films, whether it is user-generated material, whether it is just newspaper news, whether it is corporate videos, educational videos that we are doing now, etc., etc. So there are many media that or many genres that have been distributed through audiovisual translation, and that has meant, or that has led to this boom an explosion in the need for people to deal with audiovisual translation, but also in the different genres that we are doing in this field. And as I said, the terminology has always been a bit unstable. At the beginning, we were talking about cinema or film translation. I myself am one of those culprits. When I started in the 90s, I called quite a few of my articles when I wrote film translation or cinema translation, which were very, very reductionist. You've got as well other areas there, constraint, multimedia. Now, a lot of people are talking about multimodal. We've got many dimensions, and people are discovering this area. There are a few books now in translation, which is multimodal translation and bringing what is new if we add multimodal, even for corpora. Studies in translation, people are bringing multimodality to see how our corpora can be much more useful, because right now we only base our material in written text rather than in the environment, by you seeing me how I might move my hands, or whether I am laughing, or whether my facial expressions are also communicating. And most of the material that we have for translation in general is only on the written side. In English, the term that is, it was popular for a while, and still some people call it that way, is screen translation. Remember, the English people don't like long words. It's always shortenings, monosyllabic expressions. And it took them a while to use audiovisual translation as a term for this area. In fact, many people don't know how to write it. And then you will find audio hyphen visual. You will see it as I do it myself, audiovisual altogether, and you might also see audio separated from visual. Yeah, and it's a bit sort of hesitant in its graphical representation. What is it then, audiovisual translation? What do I mean, or what do we mean by audiovisual translation? We can take a look at this from a traditional perspective and from a more contemporary perspective, though, concepts like traditional and contemporary can be rather misleading sometimes. From a traditional perspective, and in the idea of language transfer, we are moving from one language into another. We've got an audiovisual production that needs to be translated. We've got two main ways of dealing with it. On the one hand, we've got what is known generally an umbrella term, which is revoicing. And revoicing, what it means is that I'm going to be using another voice in a different language. And I can do it in many ways. I can do interpreting, and still we continue to do interpreting. Some political discourses, speeches might be interpreted there and then. Traditionally, film festivals will also make use of interpreters to interpret films that were arriving at the film festival too late, and technology wasn't as developed as it is these days to produce subtitling, for instance. And then you've got the Franco-German company, TV company called Arte, which now broadcasts in more languages than just French and German. They have quite a lot of interpreters to work with their programs. So they have live audiences that can speak in German or can speak in French, and they are interpreting there and then. So this is one area that is being done, and we probably haven't paid that much attention from within audiovisual translation. Then you've got dubbing, whereby we wipe out the soundtrack of the original video and we change it for another soundtrack in another language. I come from a country where we do that mostly. So traditionally, the film will be, the audio will be taken away in English, then somebody will be speaking in Spanish, and we will pretend, we will believe a fiction within a fiction that those people are speaking Spanish, that Jennifer Lopez speaks Spanish fluently, the same as Brad Pitt and whoever you want. Yeah. If you are not used to dubbing, you might think that it looks really weird. But for my country fellows, it's just a normal occurrence that they watch every day on the television. We need to do certain things, and we talk about synchronies. So there are three types of synchronization. One, the most important one is probably lip syncing. So you want to just move your lips in the same way as the originals, or produce text in Spanish that will force the actors to move their lips the same way as the ones on the screen, so that you don't see any clashes between what you hear and the movement of the lips. There is also what we call isochrony, which is the length of the sentence. So you want to make sure that if they are speaking for 3 seconds, your translation can fit in comfortably in those 3 seconds. If it's too long, then you might see the people closing their mouth and then still continuing to talk. And then the third type of synchronicity that we discuss here is character synchronization. If I am doing all this, then you will probably understand that I am upset and I'm shouting. So you're not going to expect, oh, yes, it's very nice. Thank you. You probably expect some swearing or some sort of intonation that represents what I am doing. And if it's a period drama, then you are going to expect people speaking in a type of way that is in consonance with that period and the way they used to speak in the 18th century or whatever it is presented. So all those are the dimensions that we take into consideration when we are dealing with dubbing. If you are dealing another area, and I think you are probably much more familiar than I am, is voiceover, which is very typical in countries like Poland as well, and the Baltic states. They used to have it. And what this is you can hear the original a little bit, then you um, lower the volume of the original, and then you overlap the translation with another voice. So somebody's going to be talking over the original soundtrack that is still audible in the background. In many countries, this is only done in the news or something that is factual programs. A documentary that contains an interview, it might be done that way. It's very unusual to do it with fiction. But in some countries like Poland, which is called lektor, that's that's what they would do in television. And curiously enough, is going to be done by just male voices, apart from some documentaries that are done by a female voice. And she's very famous in the country because it's the only female voice dealing with this. Surprising if you consider that translation tends to be a rather feminine profession. But then all the voices that you hear there are just male. And usually you don't act on the translation. You will use a standard neutral delivery, and very little intonation is included. So if people are crying or shouting, your translation will be sort of flat against that background. And the extra dimensions, the extra paralinguistic dimensions of shouting or laughing or whatever, you can get directly from the original soundtrack. And then the final one here, there are many more, but I think this four encapsulates what we need to know, is narration. And narration, basically what we do is we wipe out completely the original, and then we come up with another with a translation. It's done in cases of documentaries where you don't see anyone. So you've got the images, planet water, or planet, what's it called? Planet, planet ocean, or ocean planet. One of those documentaries that you can just hear somebody talking, you enjoy the images, the nature, the animals, the plants, whatever it is that they are showing us, and we translate it ignoring what has been done in the original. And then you've got some flexibility sometimes to expand your translation because the person speaking in the original is not visible. So you can play a lot more with your translation. And usually you have to make sure that if they're talking about whales, at a particular point, your translation is going to make reference to the whales that are appearing on the screen rather than later when they disappear from the screen. It's much more relaxed, probably in terms of synchronicity, than any of the other translation that we've got there. The second big approach is that we take a decision of leaving the original as it is, and then I'm going to add information. And this is what is come to be known now as timed text. This is a very, very new jargon. This is new jargon in our industry. It was never called that this before the big guys came into the equation, and by those I mean Netflix, that starting calling this text, timed text. Yeah, we were talking more about titling from subtitling, titling, rewriting. Some people as well. Although rewriting brings in too many other connotations from certain translation theoreticians, which is beyond subtitling and is more in translation in general. But because you have to write, some people call it that way. But anyway, so this is this time text, which is we leave the original as it is, and then I'm going to be adding written text onto those images to make sure that you can understand. Traditionally, when we are dealing with screens of any type, cinema, televisions, now more and more computers, we talk about subtitling. And if I am doing this in live performances and started in the theater, we call them SAR titles. Now they blurring quite a lot. Subtitles in the original essence, they were invented in Canada by one of the operas in Montreal, and at the opera house in Montreal. And what they were doing in French was sous-titré, means that the text is at the bottom of the screen, sous. Then they said, well, we're going to put it on the top of the stage. So we're going to call it sur titling, because sur means above. Yeah, it doesn't work as that well in English. It is not as transparent, but we copy from that. Now, the reality is that subtitles are not only on the top of the screen, and many opera houses, you will go and then in front of your seat, you got a little screen whereby you can activate subtitles. You go to Barcelona Opera, and then you can see the screen in front of you, and you can switch your subtitles to Catalan, to Spanish, or to English while listening to the opera or watching the opera on stage. And then it's move on from opera to theaters and so on. Subtitling, I won't explain too much more than that, because I'm going to pay more attention to this. This is going to be the area that I'm going to be focalizing a lot more. So these are the two main approaches with different areas. Some other authors have come up with up to 20, 10, 15 different types of transfer when we are dealing with audiovisual translation. But I think these are enough and clear. You've got here a little example of dubbing for you to know. And pay attention to the how the lips are moving and how the information is an idea on how, if you paid attention, if you know any of those languages, you can see that, you know, at one point he finishes with ich, and in the mouth, what we can see is the mouth opening as if it was the I in German. So they follow to that nuance in that detail. This is why this has been one of the areas that probably has suffered most through COVID, because traditionally to do the dubbing, you will have to go to a studio and be present in a dubbing studio, which is one of the things that we haven't been allowed to do, is mingle and move to places. And what we're moving now, and is developing quite fast, is cloud-based dubbing. So people are recording from Kiev, and then somebody's recording the actual recording in London or in Sheffield, as it happens, or in New Zealand, in Auckland, where there is another company working with these platforms. I will be discussing cloud-based platforms, and we will be doing that with subtitling. But this is another area that is growing really, really fast as we are talking. And then the other area, a bit more traditional, if you want, a bit less traditional, and in some countries is still underdeveloped completely, is that or accessibility to the media. This comes from the concept that societies should be as inclusive as possible, and people with sensory disabilities should be also be considered, whether they are deaf or whether they are blind or whether they've got cognitive challenges. They should be entitled to understand and to follow what is being transmitted audiovisually. You can see now, I was only yesterday playing with my PowerPoint, and now PowerPoints, very, very easily, I could be producing subtitles as I am talking. You don't need to do anything. They've incorporated a new system whereby I only need to touch a button, and then my subtitles will be appearing at the bottom of the screen here when I am talking. They're a bit disruptive for me, so I just decided not to have that because it does it automatically. So Sometimes it won't recognize my voice, or it will come up with something different. And I found it a little bit disrupting for my own liking. But that is straight away. You just get the information in there if you want to try and test. And this is gaining momentum because, of course, we're all communicating through computers. We are all in different places, and all the big players like Microsoft, Zoom. You could have Zoom. And Zoom, actually, when you record, it also gives you a transcript of what is being said, automatically created. Yeah, so we're playing a lot with that to use that as well in subtitling. So in this accessibility area, the traditional one that probably everybody's familiar with is sign language interpreting. And again, it's been very present on our screens during this pandemic. But we also have two other areas that probably we have analyzed a lot more within translation studies, which is subtitling for people who are deaf and hard of hearing, also called closed captioning in American English, and then hence the symbol that you see there for the two C's. This is in many countries by law. To give you an example, in the UK, most TV stations and the public-owned one, the BBC, will do 100% of all their programs will have subtitles. Yeah, so they don't do anything that it hasn't got subtitles. So if there is a tennis match or if there is a football match, then that program will have to have subtitles, and that means that it's live. So they always say that the BBC works 365 days a year, because even at Christmas there will be people doing subtitling for programs that are live. So this subtitling can be done intralingually within the same language, but quite a few people are also doing it across languages. So you get an American film that gets subtitles that are done for Ukrainian people that cannot hear. And the standard subtitles wouldn't be enough to understand what is going on in there. And the other approach is this standard subtitling will be, or this SDH, as we call it in English, will be more for pre-prepared programs. There will be a film that I receive and I create the subtitles. But if it's a tennis match, which happens to be one of my favorite sports, so if it's a tennis match, there isn't much that I can do beforehand. I have to wait and see who is playing, how they're playing and doing this. So usually the way we do it is through a practice that is called re-speaking. Yeah, and re-speaking is I am listening, and I'm a hybrid between a subtitler and an interpreter. I am hearing what they are saying and I re-speak. I say the same that they are saying in my language, in the same language as the original or as a translation. And I have to add, for instance, punctuation, because when I'm talking, I'm not telling you there is a full stop, capital letter, there is a comma. So I need to incorporate that so that when it appears on the screen, the text is comprehensible. Yeah, it can be read easily. Yeah, so I add the punctuation and so on, and I just speak to a mic that I've been training, voice recognition that I've been training, so that it recognizes my voice and it doesn't commit too many mistakes. So this is an area that is growing as well very fast, and is compulsory to be doing when you're dealing with news and with programs that are live. And then the other area that is also developing in many countries. Some countries in Europe have been doing it for a long time. In some countries, it used to be a niche market, so not much was being done, but it's audio description for people who are blind and partially sighted. They also watch the news. They also watch the telly, and they need access to this information. And you can do it, something in Ukrainian that is being done in Ukrainian for the deaf and hard of hearing, for the blind people, but it might be a program that is an American program that it comes with subtitles. So if you are blind and you cannot read the subtitles, so what we are doing in countries like Sweden, where everything is done with subtitles, in Flanders, in Belgium, in the UK as well, is audio subtitling. So we give information about the film, but also add the information that comes in the subtitles. And I'm going to show you a little video so that you can see more or less what this means in real practice. This is from a film by Disney. It's very, very short at the beginning, but just see what is happening and then listen to how they are explaining to us what's going on in this multimodal and multimedia product.
From the creators of Tangled and Wreck-It Ralph, Disney. A carrot-nosed, coal-eyed snowman shuffles up to a purple flower peeping out of deep snow. He takes a deep sniff. His nose lands on a frozen pond. A reindeer looks up and pants like a dog. Seeing the reindeer slip on the ice, the snowman smiles and moves towards him, though actually he's running on the spot. The reindeer falls on his chin. The snowman uses his arm as a crutch. The reindeer paddles his front legs. Head over heels, the snowman crawls along the ice. The reindeer does the breaststroke. The snowman rolls his body, but flips onto his back. The reindeer's tongue sticks to the ice. The snowman held his head. Twig arm and reindeer lips tug at the carrot. The carrot flies off and lands in soft snow. The reindeer goes after it with Snowman and his body parts hanging on his tail. The snowman puts himself back together again and glumly contemplates his noseless state. The reindeer jams the carrot back in place and pants like a proud puppy. The snowman pats him with his stick-thin arm, then goes to sneeze. He grabs his nose with both hands. His head shoots off. Frozen, coming this winter in 3D.
Okay, so you've got there an idea of what is it that we do and how do we do it for people who don't have access otherwise. Now, audio description is growing quite fast because this idea of the need for inclusive societies, but also because big players like, for instance, Netflix have already started incorporating it as a sort of standard function when you want to watch programs on their telly. It's growing a bit less than subtitling for deaf people, which, as I said, for instance, in the UK, 100% is done of programs with SDH, whereas around about 20% is being done for audio description. These both areas are heavily legislated, and the European Union is passing legislation now, the Audiovisual Media Directive, whereby accessibility is going to be compulsory in all the European countries. So you can see why the need to be growing and creating modules and preparing people that are fully aware of what the needs and how to deal with this area. So if you are thinking about developing audiovisual translation programs, I will be, thinking about the lines of the main areas: dubbing, if in your country a lot of dubbing is done, subtitling, which is very standard in most countries, but also incorporating things like audio accessibility, and bringing in other strategies and skills and services for your future translators. Now, how countries deal with things. Some countries traditionally have preferred dubbing, and then you've got here quite a few countries there, and some other countries preferred traditionally subtitling. A few ideas have been floated of how some countries prefer one thing or the other. Nothing is really black and white. There are many reasons why they can go in different directions, but the reality is that they are mixing in many countries, and there isn't something that we can say is in one go. Now, the European Union has been interested in this, and they've done a few reports on how do we consume audiovisual productions. And this is an area that I know is very interesting for other associations to see how is the world consuming audiovisual production. So you've got here, this is research done by the European Union, perhaps a little bit old now, a bit too black and white. So blue, they do dubbing, they do subtitling; red, they do dubbing. We mix a little bit more, and it will be, if it was granular, a bit more granular, it would be better for the industry to know if you want to make it into the Finnish market, what should you be doing if you want to sell your products there, or if you want to bring your films there. But this is one area, and then in here there is an attempt to map the world in the way we consume audiovisual production. So again, you've got here information a little bit more granular if you want, with more details in there, even if it's public or private televisions, for instance, but it still is an area that we haven't really researched in detail. There hasn't been any projects that have tackled this in detail. And then what you find here as well is what I like also doing with my students is splitting them in groups and then asking them, what are the pros of dubbing, what are the pros of subtitling, and then for them to start discussing the different areas there. You've got here the ones that I thought of when comparing both. Clearly, subtitling is cheap much cheaper than dubbing because it requires less people and less technicians, and is faster to be done. And that's why it's been always privileged and prioritized by many companies that want to sell abroad. But what we know now, and the little research that has been done, is that in many countries, dubbed versions or revoiced versions of programs tend to reach more people. There is anecdotal research that has been done, but the same video floated on the internet with dubbed version and subtitled version, many more people watch it dubbed or revoiced, and many more people will also tend to redistribute, to share with other people and finish. Whereas the people watching it dubbed, they tend not to finish as many, and they tend not to share with other friends, yeah, or with other colleagues. So this is some things that we are investigating in the world of social media and dissemination on the internet. As I said, the origins are they vary. Some people, illiteracy rates in some countries at the time that when cinema was invented impeded subtitling becoming more standard. So the people that didn't have those issues went for subtitling, whereas the countries where their populations weren't that educated went for dubbing, which is easier to receive. There is also political repression. We know that many countries, Spain among those, but Germany, Italy, um, um, yeah, all these countries, other countries in the world, China, I'm sure Russia, and many others, they have legislation on what can be said on the television and what can be done. And in many countries, they made it compulsory that only the language of the country could be heard on the screen, which meant that subtitling couldn't exist, because that means that you have to listen to English or to French or to another language and then do the subtitles. So by making it compulsory that everything that you heard on the screen had to be in your own language, in your national language, you manage to make your language much more disseminated. And particularly think of countries like Italy, Germany, that are divided by so many dialects, where they could just choose one. In Germany, Hochdeutsch; in Italy, Florentine Italian; in Spain, Spanish, as opposed to Catalan or Basque or Galician or any other languages. So it suited these countries in that way. And again, if you're interested, there is quite a lot of research being done in this area from the political perspective. There is also economic factors. We said before, if dubbing is more expensive, some countries will prefer subtitling because it makes it much more effective and less onerous on their finances. Sometimes there's artistic and aesthetic values. People that like cinema, cinephiles, will say, oh, I will never watch a film that is being dubbed. That's not really the same product, is not the same experience, and they will go that way. And then for a long time, we were saying that, we are creatures of habit. So if you are used to dubbing, you're not going to change. You're going to continue using dubbing. And if you are in a country that does subtitling, because from an early age you're doing that, then you're not going to change. What we know now is that it's not really that way, and quite a few countries are changing things the way they're doing. Dubbing countries, Spain, France, Germany, Italy, we're seeing more and more subtitling. And if you go to any of the online providers, OTT providers these days, in those languages that traditionally was only dubbing, now you also find lots of subtitling, and the market is flourishing in subtitling in these languages. The reality is that we find now both dubbed versions and subtitled versions, but also subtitling countries. They're also going into lots of dubbing. Greece, subtitling all their lives. Now they discovered Latin American soap operas, Turkish soap operas, and they prefer to dub those rather than use subtitles, so that you can continue doing other things and you don't have to be glued to the screen reading the text, but you can hear and listening. It's a little bit, my grandmother used to listen to radio soap operas. So she will put the radio full blast and she will be doing things in the house and listening to those stories that were told. So I'm a little bit like that. Now we have discovered that, countries that traditionally don't translate much, and when they do, they go to subtitling, like the UK, the USA. Now they're moving as well to dubbing. And I'm not sure if you've been following Netflix and their approach to dubbing. So many foreign films now in Spanish, in French, in German you can also watch them dubbed into English. And for the English people, it's still something awkward, very strange. They're not quite into that, although some people are starting to do it. And in the USA, it's going very well. You know, they have Money Heist, La Casa de Papel, the Spanish one. It became what it is because of the dubbed version in many countries. That when people go into that. So we're seeing a new boom of dubbing, which wasn't there before. And then it also depends on the new media. So, you know, cinema, television, whether it is public, for instance, some countries in Latin America, public television will be dubbed. Commercial television, where people can pay and they assume that they're going to be from different cultural background, then they use subtitles. Yeah. In Poland, television will use voiceover for films. You go to the cinema, the same film comes out with subtitles. So it really varies according to places and so on. But the reality, as I said, is that subtitling tends to be the favorite one because of it's fast, cheap, and very flexible. Yeah, despite this growing of revoicing. Now, let's move now to subtitling. You might be aware, if not, I will make you aware, and this is a little bit of plugging in my latest book. And subtitling just came out before Christmas and is now available. As you can see, it comes with, we reached an agreement with Una and with WinCaps, which are two providers of software for subtitling. And the book comes with a companion website, which contains lots of information. I'll be giving you much more information about this tomorrow and how you can exploit the material and the content that comes in this book multimedia project so that you can use it for your teaching and so on. Yeah, because it contains lots of exercises exploring the technology as well. Now, what is subtitling? So I've got this little video, Vancouver Film Festival, to just jokingly make us be more aware about subtitling.
The following film may contain scenes with subtitles.
マジかよこれ。こんなの信じれるか。見たことねえぞ。
Or scenes that for some cruel reason don't have subtitles. Or scenes with subtitles that make the character seem less intelligent.
だから言ってるじゃん、すごいって。
Or scenes with subtitles that give you the strange feeling you're missing out on something.
計画通りやれば絶対逃げ切れうまくいくって言っただろ。ユズの野郎は知らねえんだよ。これで金曜日まで待てば俺たちは絶対逃げ切れるぞ。絶対セーフだ。死の果てまで逃げ切ってやる。
An open mind is advised.
Okay, so I give you an idea on our, hobby horse of, what can go wrong in subtitling, the feeling that you've always been cheated out, that there's not enough information, that they don't represent, that there are mistakes, particularly if you understand the original language, and so on and so forth.
Okay, before you start to go on, there are some questions in the question and answer section.
Okay, could you, let me see then. I could see them coming, but then I have to go.
Easier for you.
Let me see. On the chat.
No, in question and answers.
Okay, sorry. Disabled. Okay. I can see 3 here, one from Olga. Do you know any interesting cases related to provision of closed captioning or audio description? I think it was before I actually discussed that. But yes, as I mentioned there, these are areas that are growing. I'm not really sure. I'm not familiar with the situation in the Ukraine. I would imagine that is, as many other countries, is probably an area that is developing. and that is happening. So watch this space. I know countries that they've never done it. Turkey, for instance, they are developing. China, they've created a body to look at accessibility and access to the media. In Spain, we've had it as well since 2005, a center for subtitling and audio description. And as I said, the European Union is legislating, making it compulsory. So it's going to be happening more and more in this area. So if there is little in your countries, I would suggest that you start looking at this and see how things are done. If, for instance, Ukrainian TV series, film, documentary was going to be shown on an internet platform, the way, for instance, Netflix is doing it is that you, as a producer, need to send your material with the audio description in Ukrainian and the subtitles as well in Ukrainian. And then they will deal with the translation into other languages. But as the product itself needs to be all included there. So not long ago, I received a request by somebody from Serbia, and they were desperate looking for somebody who could do the description for a Serbian film in Serbian, because it was something that it was going to go to Netflix, and they wanted already the whole thing coming with the films. So that is something that you might want to take into consideration. The difference between subtitles and open closed captions as well for Olga. Basically, with closed captions, we're going to see more about subtitling, and then you will know exactly what is required. So you can then make a better comparison later on. But basically, for closed captions, you will need to incorporate information of that a deaf person cannot hear. So if I am speaking with an accent, it might be important that then later the criminal is me, it was Jorge, because they knew that he spoke English with an accent. So you might want to say, well, Jorge, and then speaks with Spanish accent, and then you just tell him that the person speaks differently. It might well be that now I just leave you here, leave my headphones and everything, because I heard the doorbell ring, and why is Jorge leaving? So you will put a subtitle about doorbell ringing, and then just justifies why I'm going there. Or if there is a siren blowing on the streets or whatever. So all that information, if somebody speaks in a different language, multilingual exchanges. I am on my own now, but if we were 3 people, I know something that we do in Spain, for those of you who know Spain, and I know quite a few of you do, and have spent time in Spain there, that we will speak at the same time. So we were all here and talking at the same time. If you are deaf, even if you see subtitles, you wouldn't know whether it was me, my friends, or somebody else on the screen. So you will probably add labels. Jorge, what I'm saying. Pedro, what Pedro is saying, so that you know exactly who is saying what. Otherwise, you might not know because we're all at the same time. So that makes that difference there. Yeah. If you want, tomorrow I can show you a few examples quickly of that difference with screenshots on films and what information is there. Katerina, obscenities and so on, censorship of translator self-restriction. Again, we're jumping the gun here because I haven't really explained to you what subtitling is, and you will see this is an area that is always problematic. And I will discuss it later on. It's a bit of both censorship in certain countries, but now there is not such excuse when guidelines from Netflix will tell you, please don't censor any of the content, and don't use euphemisms. If somebody's saying something really strong, we want a translation that is also strong in there. But in some other countries, public television tends to be a little bit more shy about this, and they will use bleeping, so you don't hear, you use beep, or you get an F asterisk 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 ing, which I always wonder, is there anybody in the world that doesn't know what that means? Because it's probably the same as saying the F word. But anyway, those are the strategies that you will be finding in there. But I will mention a little bit later as well. And Anastasia Chevanova, should a translator have voice acting experience to create audio description for blind and visually impaired people, or is translation and narration done by people, by different people? Actually, both happen in the industry. Traditionally, because it was a niche market, it was the same person doing doing the script, the audio script, and then also putting the voices. But now, because they need lots of people and they're working many more, so sometimes I'm not one of those with a nice voice, and many people are that don't have a voice to be recording. So they will be asking people, okay, can you please write the audio description? And then somebody with a nice voice will be putting the audio description on top. So you find both approaches. If anything, I would say that is growing that is separate. That you as a translator create, and again here you can find two different options. They give you a film and you translate, you audio describe it, you create a script, or they might give you the film with the audio description in English, and then they will be asking you to translate the script in English into Ukrainian. Yeah, which sometimes people don't like because you're not only translating the text, but you are also translating the way they watch the film. And we watch films differently. There is research done on Spanish films, audio described for an English audience and audio described for a German audience. And the Germans describe things differently and pay attention to different things to the English people. So if you then translate from German, you're going to pay more attention to the cemetery in this particular project. If you audio describe in English, you're going to pass by the cemetery scene and don't pay attention to that. So again, that depends on how you want to go about it. But yeah, it's an area that is so new that people are trying in different ways to how to go about it. But if, like me, you don't have a nice voice, you can still do scripts. And if you've got a nice voice, you can do both. And if you speak other languages, you can do the three things. You can translate, you can create, and you can also revoice. Yeah.
Jorge, are there any norms for nice voice? What is a nice voice for voiceovers?
It really depends. I don't know. There is a lot of that is being done, for instance, synthetic voices, and people are creating voices, and then they say it's velvety. I'm not really sure what velvety means, or is sensual, or is whatever. I guess if you have done drama studies or acting, maybe those things ring a bell, and then you can modulate your accents, and then you become a bit sexier or a bit aggressive or a bit something. So they do. That's the way they are testing these days. And on some occasions, they say that blind people cannot really tell the difference between synthetic voices and real voices. So that's the way they are exploring this area. And of course, speech technologies are developing so fast these days that anything that relies on speech is also developing. Audio description, audio subtitling, we're struggling, dubbing, uh, you know, as long as the technology moves ahead, we're also moving. And usually we go behind, but we are seeing how things are going there. Yeah. But yes, I do tell my students, if they think that they've got a nice voice and so on, they should be really looking into learning. And there are some places where you can just learn how to modulate your voice, and then play a little bit with us, because it is happening more and more. And it doesn't need to be just audio description, corporate videos as well. For many corporate videos that they would like some voices, they don't want to go to famous people, but just people that will be nicely done. Exams, videos that are meant to be for exams and so on. They're always looking for voice talents, as they are called in the industry. And yes, if you think that this is an area that you could exploit and use as your service, by all means. Yeah. I think that resolves most of the questions there, but please alert me again if there are any, or stop me and then ask. So here you have a definition of subtitling. I'm going to try to go a bit fast on this because I'm leaving the PowerPoints behind, and you can read in more detail. Because I'm aware of the time, and I really want to show you the platform so that you can see how it works and so on. So here you have the definition. Is it might be defined as a translation practice, and you might wonder why I say that. I'll explain. But basically what we do, we translate anything that is being said or anything that is being shown on the screen. And what I do then is produce a written text that usually I put at the bottom of the screen, yeah, and give a translation. Yeah, that's basically what this quote is saying here. Now, may be defined as a translation practice. And this is something that might shock you, but it was never considered translation until very late in the 20th century, in the 90s, where people started considering this translation and teaching it. But before, it wasn't taught. The first courses in audiovisual translation started in the 80s in France, in Lille, a very small group cohort of students. We know until the 90s that this starts growing. And this means that it's been going on for about 20, 25 years, no more than that. More success in some countries than in others. And in many places, they didn't consider it translation. So it wasn't part of translation, because it was meant to be an adaptation. It was something that people did in work, in the industry, but it wasn't really translated. The changes were too big to what translation understood as literary translation or medical translation is. And because it was so creative or so different to the original, it wasn't taught. Yeah, and that's why we've been lagging behind. And I know some of the companies now, they say they lack talent. They don't have enough people to be working in this in certain countries, because universities in Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, millions and millions of people, no universities teach audiovisual translation. Very few. And if they do, they're very theoretical and they don't know how to deal with the technology and how to deal with the actual translation. So that's why many companies are struggling and asking, we need people with the expertise in lots of languages, but they're simply not there. And we've been, I have to say, a bit slow on the take in academia. And again, tomorrow, for those of you more into didactics, I'll show you some of the documents that traditionally have been produced for translators, where you get all the information, what we call dialogue lists, or combined continuity and spotting dialogue lists. And those are documents that can be 300 pages, produced only for us translators. And they contain information that they expect you to translate. The big blockbusters from the USA, they've always been very, very good at dealing with this. But some European films or European companies, they send you a film and tell you translate. And usually what they give you is a really poor dialogue list. And then you find films where the songs are not translated, where text that is on the screen, they didn't realize and they don't translate it either, and so on. So that's why still we seem to be missing lots of information in some of the subtitles, because people didn't think about what is not said. So we kept only translating dialogue rather than anything else that is also needed there. One of the few articles, and I like quoting it a lot, it is by somebody called Dirk de la Bastida in 1989. And he's never, well, he has written a little bit about this, but he just wrote a very sort of off the cuffs article, and didn't continue writing more on audiovisual translation. And what he was wondering at this time in 89, it was, why is everybody talking now? People start talking about audiovisual translation. What is this? Why is that important? Is it different to what we do in other areas? And then when he comes to analyze, okay, we've got, with audiovisual programs and the audiovisual object, I've got two dimensions. On the one hand, I've got the audio, the acoustic, and on the other hand, I've got the visual. And they bring in information in different ways. Acoustically, I can see verbal signs. I can hear verbal signs like dialogues or monologue, dialogue exchanges, monologues, and that is what I need to translate if I'm doing subtitling, dubbing or voiceover. But I can also hear lots of music. I can hear music, instrumental music, songs. I can hear background noise. And normally we accept that as being Esperanto. Everybody will understand those noises. We don't do anything normally. It's not really true, because I could be very critical now. I will be criticizing somebody and say that there is a family where the daughter was married or is still married to a thief, and then the father went out of the country because he was followed by corruption and so on. And you might not know who I am talking. I could put the national anthem behind me, and then those of you who know that is the anthem of Spain, that you can relate to who I'm talking. But I'm not saying anything, but it's the sound. And then with the sound, you can put all the puzzle together. Yeah, and that's what many directors use. And particularly in countries where they've got censorship, that's one way of getting the information, through sounds and ways of presenting the information. Traditionally, we don't do anything unless you're doing SDH. This is exactly the information where you as a translator come on the screen and incorporate that information. Is that the national anthem of Spain? Is that, what type of music is that? Is upbeat? Is it nostalgic? Is it classical music? Who is singing? All that information is what you need to bring in. Yeah. If I stutter when I speak, then maybe you need to indicate that he's stuttering when he's speaking, because it's probably important for the development of the plot. Yeah. And then what we also see, yeah, and when we see verbal signs, and then those we need to translate. Banners in a demonstration, I receive a message on my mobile, and then the camera goes to the mobile, and then you can see how they're exchanging messages on their telephones and so on. So all that information that is written needs to be translated. But we also see lots of things. I can tell you, listen, don't go. And most of you probably don't know what I'm saying. If anybody understands Spanish or has been to Spain, they know what I said. They know why they don't have to go. They don't have to go because it's full. And this is the symbol we do, is full. That's a symbol we do in Spain. So I haven't said it, but my information is completed. Everybody knows what I've said. So gestures can be very, very cultural. We normally don't do anything unless, again, you are audio describing for people who are deaf, who are blind. And then all those images, those kinesics, those gestures, the background, it might be important what I've got behind me, or in Harry Potter, the action, all that information is the one that needs to be verbalized, needs to be conveyed to the audience. Yep. So those are the semiotic dimensions. Now, what is missing here, crucially, is the target text. And P never discusses what can you do with the actual translation. And we know, if I write on an image and I write no, N-O, it's flat, it's boring, and it's nothing. But if I said no, and I write an N, then I write a big O, a smaller O, a very smaller O, another smaller O, and then a really small O, then my message is different. I'm bringing a no that is down, or if I do something like karaoke and I'm sending the information differently. Now, that's what many people are now investigating, on how you produce another experience, an immersive experience with the film or with the program, and the text is helping you gain other emotions in the information. Now, audiovisual translation becomes problematic when the audio and the visual are there. Otherwise, you translate as normally. We're not translating. If somebody says, this is not for me, then you translate, this is not for me. You're not going to translate differently because it's audiovisual. We follow audiovisual, but it's only on occasions that the audio and the visual come together to just make our lives more exciting and challenging. This is a clip from Pulp Fiction. Okay, so how would you translate this? If you were to do subtitles, or if you were to translate with dubbing, what would you do at the end? She's trying to convince him to go to the restaurant. He doesn't want to. And she's going to sort of not insult him, but he's going to, define him in a way that is probably not what he would like. So here you have it.
This is Jack Rabbit Slims. An Elvis man should love it.
Come on, man, let's go get a steak.
You can get a steak here, Daddy-O. Don't be a...
So, don't be a... She doesn't say anything else. Continues. We see extra diegetically that is here, this symbol. You will come up with the expression, don't be such a square, don't be a square, even though it's not a square, because it's actually a rectangle. But yeah, you can see I'm being a square. In Spanish, I'm lucky. It's more or less the same as in English. So you have a square mind. You're a bit closed. You're a bit obtuse. You're not open to new things. Blah blah. So I could probably leave it that way, and people will understand. But I do know for a fact that in China that wouldn't mean anything. And if I just translate "don't be such a," and I don't say anything, ... then I know many Chinese would look at this and say, "Don't be what?" And that what doesn't exist in English, because I know what she's saying because of that drawing in there. So that's when it becomes problematic. That's when it becomes challenging. I've got another example here chicken run, and then you've got this little one. Why is it funny at the end? If you haven't seen the film, this is the cockerel trying to teach these hens how to fly so that they can abandon this farm where they are kept prisoners. Okay, and he cannot fly himself. So this hen is getting suspicious that something is amiss in here. So that's what you see.
I thought you were going to teach us how to fly.
That's what I'm doing.
Isn't there usually some flapping involved?
Hey, do I tell you how to lay eggs? Relax. We're making progress.
Really? I can't help feeling we're going round in circles.
Now, you might laugh at this. I cannot escape that feeling that we are going round in circles. They are going round in circles. The camera moves, and that's why it's funny, it's quirky, it's interesting as a film. Now, here you have the translation into Spanish, which I will back translate to you so that you can see what it means. She's saying, really? Yes. I have got the sensation, the feeling that we're not going anywhere, that we're not going to any part, that we're not going anywhere. If I were to see that written, then it's a good translation. That's what it means. That metaphor, we're going around in circles. It means that they're not doing anything, that they're not going to where they want to go and blah, blah, blah. So it is a good translation, linguistically speaking, but to me, it's feeling something that is not, it doesn't do justice to the images. What I could do in Spanish, and then I will play with the metaphor and the images, is something like, le estamos dando demasiadas vueltas, which means we are giving it too many rounds in our head. We're thinking too much and we're not doing anything. But by using thinking too much is going or giving it too many rounds in the head, then those rounds go with the images and make it visual. That's why I prefer this translation. It's not that the other one is wrong, because the person clearly understood the original. It is that it doesn't match well the images. And that's here when the images and the text need to become symbiotic. Yeah, and that's what I prefer this. So that's what we need to raise. That's the awareness when we are doing the translation on how we can bring our translation close to those images and the images embedded in our translation. Yeah. What are the main characteristics? I'm going to move this because sometimes you don't see. This comes from somebody called Jan Ivarsson, which by some of us is known as the dad of translation. He wrote a book in the 90s and on subtitling, and he's been really, really famous, Jan Ivarsson. He's got it on his website, and I like this idea, like packing all the ideas and their finest nuances into 2 lines is damn difficult, and he cannot finish writing anymore because the 2 lines are complete and done. There is no much more information that I can put there. If you look, I like this because if you look at it, it looks somehow old. It looks like teletext. It looks, when I was a child, I had a little machine that I put a plastic belt there, and then if I press really hard, the consonants and the vowels will grow there, and then because it was adhesive, I will write my name and put it on my books, and my books had my name and things like that. And I like using it because it gives that idea of something archaic, something old that is really heavily dependent on technology, and that is what subtitling is. You know, for many years in subtitles, you couldn't do certain things because analog technology didn't allow for italics. So italics wouldn't appear on television on some subtitles because it wasn't, you couldn't do it. Somebody, when they did analog technology, they just came up with, you could only write 35 characters per line. So 35, when we say 35 per line, looks like or sounds a bit like symbolic, esoteric. It's just that they didn't think. And when they thought there is something here and we could add text, it was done in such a way that only 35. Yeah, and that's why we've had so much theory on 35, sometimes 37 characters. Now you can write as much as you want. And that's how technology is evolving and helping us in many ways. Now, 2 of the main characteristics of subtitling are reduction, yeah, and the other one, the change of medium. Reduction, it would always depend on, we don't reduce all the time. And this is something that I find my students always overdo it at the beginning to prove that they like subtitling very much. they over reduce the information and they delete too much information. And of course, if you do that, is remember the clip that I put at the beginning from the film festival. If somebody is speaking a lot, even if they are speaking in Ukrainian and I don't understand any Ukrainian at all, believe you me, I will know. If you give me a subtitle that is too short, I will know that something is going wrong because I can hear a lot, I'm expecting a lot. And if somebody says niet, and then I find in my subtitle, well, really, I'm not in agreement with you, I might think, well, actually, that might not be what they said because I can hear something that is very short and the subtitle is coming with a very, very long text there. So that's what we call in the industry the gossip effect. There is always this background information. And if you're translating from English, that's even more problematic because a lot of people will understand English and they will expect certain words to be also on the subtitles and so on. So this gossip effect is going to be always there. So I need to be careful that I don't delete more than I need to. It is true that we need to reduce, and sometimes it will depend on the delivery. If I speak really slowly, then I will be able to translate 100% all the information. But if I speak really fast when I'm doing now, and I tell you that I came to England when I was about, when I finished my degree in Spain and I came to work in a university in Roehampton University, and then I went to Luxembourg, and then I came back to here and I started working in Imperial College, and then I went to UCL College. Then if you need to subtitle that in the time that I said it, you're going to have to condense a lot. You will hate me forever and have to condense. What we find now is that in many films and TV series, they do speak fast because they only have half an hour, 45 minutes per episode, and then they need to incorporate all the information. Yeah. So A, how fast are they speaking? And B, how fast is the audience going to be able to read? And this is something that we're always struggling because, of course, grandparents, your younger children or siblings, they're going to be struggling reading on the screen. Whereas you, most of you are very familiar with internet and mobiles, always reading on screens, and other people that haven't had the opportunity, they're not going to be fast. So who do I keep happy when I do my subtitles? And I need to reach an agreement, a compromise on what is going to be done. Yeah? The reality is that we do both total and partial deletion, and you will have to teach your students that some information has to go. It cannot stay on the screen, even if they say it. Yeah, and they will have to be careful on what do they keep and what is it that do they make away. And then the other change that I think is unique in translation is that we change of medium. We are hearing something that is spoken, and I'm going to go to written. And of course, the spoken, we speak differently. We say things that we wouldn't write. And part of that, for instance, swearing. Swearing is very common when you're speaking, but not so much when you have to write it. And then how do you relate to that? But also when we speak in certain languages, in Spanish, we usually delete some consonants in some verbs when we're speaking at the end. In French, they delete the negation, the first negation, je n'ai pas fini, j'ai pas fini, but you know, when you need to, and lots of things that we do in certain languages. How do you reflect that in the subtitles? Tradition has been that we don't reflect it. Yeah, and that's why people feel cheated. That, oh, the police and the thief, the lawyer and the criminal, they speak the same. There's no level in nuances in register because we don't play. Usually we don't play with the morphology. We play more with the lexical, the semantic dimension. So we find a word that is more or less registered, but I don't play with elisions or droppings or consonants or whatever. It's very, very rare in subtitling. So that's the challenge on how do we do that. You know, in all other areas, dubbing, somebody's speaking in the translation. A poem is written, but in subtitling, we get differently. Now, in the book that I mentioned to you, I've got information there. I'm going to be following, or I'm going to be giving you so that you can use guidelines these days. They are available. Netflix changed the name of the game, and then you've got information in here on their website with how to do subtitles from scratch. So all the technical dimension, that's why I'm not going to go too much into detail, but all the general requirements are there and how to deal with the time of the subtitles. And then, as you can see, they've got lots of languages, including Ukrainian. So if you go to the website, they will have the Ukrainian guidelines. They've got Russian, they've got Czech, they've got Spanish, they've got Chinese, up to 30 something languages that you can watch there or download if you want to use them for your teaching. Many people are using them. They're not the only ones. As I mentioned to you, the audiovisual translation, but this association of audiovisual translators, on their website, they've got also guidelines from other associations in Swedish, in German, in Croatian, in Czech, in French, and in some other languages. So again, if you want to expose your students to more than one set of guidelines, it's more than okay. Many companies, large corporations will have their own guidelines. So students will need to be familiar with what is standard, but also they will have to be disciplined to apply the guidelines that a particular company wants to use for their particular programs. So this doesn't have to be presented to the students as there is a conflict of interests, but it's rather that, this is normal or standard, but be alert because other people might ask you to do differently, and then it's perfectly okay as well. Yeah. So what are the spatial considerations? We've got two main considerations to bear in mind: is the space that we've got available, and then the time that is available for us to produce our translation. When it comes to the space, how many subtitles, how many lines can I write? Usually I play with my students and I tease them a little bit. I ask them, how many? Chances are that most students will tell me two. Yeah, it's not always true. In some other languages they use more or something, but usually it's two. And yes, it's true. You do two. Why? There is no reason why we do. We could do many more. This is just one. We have been bringing in lots of things from the past, and we continue to a large extent. So we do a maximum of 2 lines, but it doesn't really mean that we only need to do 2. We could do 3, we could do 4, and then if you go to the internet, you will find 2, 3, 4, 5, even 6 subtitles. The nature of communication is changing. In a clip like this one here with Stephen Jobs, I'm not really interested. This video is about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. 1 minute, 30 seconds into the video, I'm sick and tired of his bald head, and it's not going to be changing. So what I do want to know is what is exactly that he's saying. The images are not important, they're inconsequential. What I really want to know is exactly what is he saying. So that's why now you will find lots of different approaches. Commercially, we still keep to 2 lines, but you will find that many other people are using them in many other ways of doing it. And in my way of seeing this in the future is that we will be much more flexible because people are going to become much more familiar, and subtitles are going to become much more common occurrence in screens, the way we're watching them. But for the purposes of this exercise and so on, I would always be recommending that students don't do more than 2, but they don't get shocked or horrified if they see more than just 2. Where do you put them? The subtitles, this varies according to companies and countries as well, traditions, but normally is 2 lines at the bottom of the screen centered. Yeah, and we don't tend to put them indent to the left. Yeah, so that's the way. But you can get some countries, Japan, for instance, sometimes in China, but they do vertically. So again, you need to be a bit aware of those things. But as I said, chances are that we're going to be working in this way. They're always centered unless they tell you other things. There's going to be this way. One thing that I also alert my students, and they're never aware, they can never think of that because they are on the receiving end. They are learning and they are getting the information. But I always tell them, well, imagine you finish and you are the expert. And then you've got this little company in Kiev or in Madrid or in Barcelona or whatever. And then they, oh, I see that you are a subtitler. Can you subtitle this video for me? Can you tell me how you do it? Yeah, and can you give me the ideas? Why do you put only 2 lines? Why don't you put 3? I think I prefer 3 lines. How can you, as an expert, convince them that they only need 2? Or that they need to be centered and not put on the top or whatever. So to learn as well on how they're going to be selling their services and how they can justify how they're doing things. And this is something that they never think too. Why? Oh, I don't know. What are you going to put the subtitles? Yeah, why there? Why not on this side? Well, I don't know. So well, that way you're not going to be selling your services very well to the to a client, to a potential client that doesn't know anything about subtitling. That's why they come to you, because you are the expert. If you're working for a company that knows about subtitling, then that's fine. But if not, if it's a little client that just produce videos, then you're not going to be convincing them. And then the background, as I said, bottom of the screen, unless something happened at the beginning. And here we've got cinema in standard, in priorities, cinema is very traditional. Television, internet is much more flexible. So cinema, if something is happening at the beginning, at the bottom of the screen, it goes to the top. Television, internet, DVD, Blu-ray, we play a lot more. So in here, the English is the original. This is a translation, and I'll put it just above. It looks nice. I don't have to go to the top of the screen, but I'm gonna put it in there. If if something is happening in this one here, I've got the same thing, but now it's the dialogue between them. So what I'm gonna do is put it in there. I'll move it a little bit and place it there. But if we were dealing with cinema, then what I'm gonna do is, if I know that text is gonna be appearing, then I'm gonna put it on the top of the screen to make sure that it's not conflicting the information. Yeah, and then students should be alert on when there are this on-screen text that doesn't need to, or my subtitles don't need to cover. There is a concept that they will need to use as well, that we use in the industry, which is that of safe area. I cannot write from one stream to the screen to the other stream of the screen. So all programs, professional programs, cloud-based programs, the one that I'm going to show you, they all create what is called a safe area, which is usually 10% on all the edges are banned. You cannot use that for translation. You cannot write beyond this green area. So you cannot write below there, or on the right there, or on the left here. Yeah, so they create that. That means that my area to translate is reduced to about 80% of the screen, depending on where I'm writing. Many programs will work like the, well, they used to, like traffic lights. So red, I'm okay. Green, I'm okay. Red, problem, danger. And yellow, I have to do something. Yeah. These days, because they give us so much information, they're more like a rainbow. You've got all colors telling you what you're doing right or wrong. But they will always be alerting you to things, and the red continues to be danger, something wrongly done. So again, most programs will be by default, they come already telling you how much is that safe area, and you don't need to do much. But sometimes you might have to change on the same area. So if I know that I've got 80% more or less of my screen to use for my translation, how many characters can I write? And I can, well, depend on the type and size. You know, if I make big fonts, then I'm going to be able to write less than if I do small. I have to reach a compromise that is not too small or too big. So if we are working with Latin-based, Cyrillic-based, or Semitic languages, Arabic, then usually we go for neutral fonts that don't have serifs. Serifs are little ornaments, you know, like the L will have something here at the end, like a little something there. So we avoid any fonts that have got extra dimensions, and we go for very basic ones. The ones that we tend to use more likely is Arial, Verdana, Helvetica. Netflix will ask you to do Arial, even though they created their own font, which is called Netflix Sans. Yeah, they have created their own font and they use it for all their films. The BBC also created their own font, which is called Tiresias. And it's a font only to do subtitles. Yeah, so we use that one. I usually tell the students, and by default, many programs come like that, Arial. Yeah, and then if you do Arial, we work with pixels, points, and then we do Arial 30. This is when we're working with images and video players and so on. It doesn't mean it's not like Word. If in Word I did Arial 30, it will be immense, you know. Arial 12 is already big. But if I am working in a screen and so on, I will set it to Arial 30, and that's what we normally do. So if I am writing like that, Arial 30, then it means that I'm going to be able to do more or less between 35 to 42 characters. If I write more than 42, chances are that I'm going to go beyond the safe area, and that's going to be wrong. So that's why you will find many companies will tell you do 39. Yeah, but Netflix is pushing the boundaries, and he's gone up to 42. Yeah, but the DVD industry, the Blu-ray industry, television, they are much happier with 39, 37, 39. It's Netflix that is pushing and going to 42. And that means characters, including the blank spaces. So you've got per line is 1, 2, 3, 4 the blank space 5, 6, 7, and 8. Yeah, so I have to count. You don't need to count them. The program will count it for you. If you happen to work with double byte languages like Japanese, Chinese, Korean, then you usually do, you've got here Chinese about 35 with the font, Korean, Japanese, and maximum 16 characters per line. Okay, that's the standard for those languages. I'm jumping just in case somebody's listening from those languages. Now, one thing that has changed dramatically for us is that traditionally we worked with mono-spaced. That meant 38 characters is 38 keyboards, key pressures on my board. Doesn't matter whether an L or an M. That clearly is a bit silly because an L occupies less space than an M. And now what subtitleless programs do is they don't use any more mono-spaced. And mono-spaced was what we had all life. And we still consider 42 characters considers or accepts that they all occupy one space. Yeah, but the reality is that if you can see here, the M or the P occupies an I and an L is the half the space of an E in there. So now what the programs do is actually they work with the safe area and proportional lettering, all of them. So that means that, for instance, I've created this fake one. If you look at the top line, it looks slightly bigger than the other one, and it counts 42 characters, whereas the other one counts 45, 3 more, but it's actually smaller. Because what I've got here, it occupies less space because I've got I, L, T, F, and things like that, that makes the text shorter. So in reality, if I tell you do no more than 42, it really is a fallacy. The subtitling program would allow me more. Yeah, and some people, if you are professional and you work with software, then sometimes they tell you as much as you can. Keep the safe area and write as much as you can. And if you write many I's and F's and T's, then your lines will be longer than if you write M's, N's, W's, and whatever. Yeah, so that's another way of working. I always tell my students, okay, work with maximum 39 or 42. But the reality is that in many companies, they will be told, well, you don't need to just write as much as you can. Yeah, because the safe area is respected there. I hope that is clear. I don't know if any questions have been coming up.
There have been some. If you are willing.
Okay, let's take a look.
There are 3 questions, which are new.
Okay, what would you recommend to read or audio description? What would you recommend to read or not the description? Okay, there are a few books, and I will show you. There is one by Luis Fryer. I'll make notes and I will give some bibliography tomorrow, and I will send it there. But there is one by Luis Fryer called Audio Description. Yeah, and thank you, Ditina, and I will create a list of reading. Yeah, if you want to read on the different areas, I will make it subtitling. Just recently, a book on subtitling for the hard of hearing came out, and it's free. It's open access, so you can access that. Is AD being taught as a course anywhere in the world? Yes, it is being taught in certain countries. At my university, we do. Many other universities, but some other universities also do. In Spain, in Barcelona, and in other places. And then there are courses now and again. Some conferences, they may have a 3-hour course or workshop before the conference so that people can learn a little bit on audio description. There is actually, if you are interested, there is a project from the European Union called AD-Lab. AD as AD, lab, laboratory, and then they've got lots of material which is free. It's open access, and they've got a course. So divided in modules and so on, with videos and so on, and you can follow, and that will be free. Yeah, so, yeah. And how do you deal with punctuation in subtitles? I will suggest that for that, basically, you deal as written text. Yeah, that's the main principle. If you are writing text on a screen, on writing text, you follow the same principle. We're not gonna be manipulating grammar in any way different. Only on a few occasions, we do something that is different. Yeah, that you wouldn't do in written text. For instance, when there is dialogue in the same subtitle. Yeah, when we use italics, although I guess that probably in Cyrillic you don't use italics, but in Latin languages we do. But inverted commas, and those normally the companies will tell you. They will have their guidelines, like Netflix, the ones that I put earlier on. If you go to their website, they will have Ukrainian, and they will tell you, well, for Ukrainian we like this, and that. If you need to do this, use inverted commas. If you need this, use an exclamation. If you need that, use a hyphen or whatever it is. So in there, they will tell you, and they vary. Normally, companies working in subtitling, they will have their own punctuation guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So temporal considerations, time considerations, how do we deal with those? So one little thing. Of course, one basic thing is when somebody is talking, I put something on the screen. When somebody stops talking, I take the text from the screen. That means that even if you don't speak Chinese or Spanish, you will relate audio, talking, text on the screen has to be the translation. Yeah, that's what we call synchronization. It's very, animal in that sense. You don't need to do anything. You see something and then something appears, your attention is caught. So that's what we call synchronization. So you need to synchronize your text, your translation with the audio. And then how do we do that? So we do something that is called spotting. And this is what I would like you to do for tomorrow. Not to do it, but to decide. So spotting, also called cueing or timing, is deciding when in a video, when am I going to go into that video? How am I going to do my subtitles? How many subtitles am I going to have on my video? And this is the first thing we do. To be able to do that, we created what is known in the industry a time code reader. So each image in a audiovisual program, film, documentary, animation, corporate video, each single frame picture has got a number. And the numbers are in here. They are hours, then they are minutes, seconds, which is what we work, and frames. Okay, so we usually have to take into consideration the last 4 seconds and frames. Okay, and what we've got here is to make it a little bit more exciting for all of us, cinema and television or internet are different. Cinema moves at 24 frames per second, traditional cinema. So many subtitling programs will tell you if it's 24 frames or anything else. So you can be working, your video can be 24 frames if it's cinema. If you are working for television or DVDs or internet, then you can be working for 25 or 29.97, 30, depending on which part of the world you are. Yeah, this is a legacy from analog technology. We're not using it that much anymore because we are using now high definition television, the way we produce audiovisual programs, but you will still have to be careful on how many frames you've got on your video. Because of course, if your video is 25, but your subtitling program is working at 24, they're gonna be out of sync. They're not gonna be working properly. So you always need to be aware on how many frames your video has got. Okay, and you need to know where you belong. Usually you've got here the distribution of the world. Yellow is most of us will be PAL, and that means that our videos move at 25 frames per second. Yeah, and those are the ones that I use with my students. But if you are in other parts of the world, like North America and so on, the orange one, SECAM, it doesn't matter, it's the same, it's 25 frames per second, so no problem. And it's only the green ones, which are NTSC, which are USA, and they move at 29.97 or 30. Yeah, and then you need to know which video you have. Otherwise, sometimes you lose the synchronicity or the subtitling program, it will recognize the video, and then it will tell you, okay, your video is whatever, yeah, 25 or 29 or whatever. So you need to bear in mind that we've got all these times, and then in here, if you're working on 29, every 29, it will be 1 more second. Yeah, because it's only every 25 is 1 more second, and I'm assuming that we are working on this one, PulseCam or HDTV at 25 frames per second. Okay, and that's the division. So the final thing that I want to tell you, and I'm worried about, I want to move to show you the program, and we'll see more tomorrow. Now, how long do I leave my subtitle on the screen? And you can leave your subtitle. What they did was this experiment many years ago, which was, okay, I can do 2 lines, maximum 35 characters per second. Yeah, that was the traditional approach. So what they did was put the text on the screen, 2 lines, full 2 lines. 1 second, who's read it? Nobody. 2 seconds, nobody. 3 seconds, nobody finishes. 4 seconds, the fast readers, they finish. 5 seconds, virtually everyone, but still people that are slow haven't managed to read it. And then they discovered that if we leave it 2 full lines, 6 seconds, everybody reads it. Even the slow readers can manage. And then from there, we created, and still vastly used in the industry, the 6-second rule. We leave maximum 6 seconds on the screen for my subtitles, and then I can do 2 full lines. And then from there, I do, I divide it. If they're speaking for 3 seconds, then it will be half. If it's 4 seconds, it's more than half. If it's 2 seconds, it's less than half. So if I can do the maximum as Netflix is 42 characters per second, 42 characters per line, then in 6 seconds, I will be able to do 84. Yeah, because it's the 2 lines. But if it's 3 seconds, it will have to be less. It will have to be 42 or a bit more than 42. Now, that way of presenting the information, which is we used to use words per minute. Now we were more characters per second. See, this one is, if we take the traditional approach, is 12 characters per second. That's very, very slow. But that is what some people do. And translating things like Big Bang Theory or House of Cards with 12 characters per second is really, really challenging because you have to delete lots of information because it's very slow. Another thing that Netflix is changing is upping the number of characters and assuming that people are reading faster because they are more used with the internet now. And they're going to up to 17 characters per second. Now, many professionals think that that is too much and they don't like working because at that speed, because they think many people don't read. They don't manage to read the full text. So 15 is the sort of compromise reading speed. Yeah. So when I work with my students, I make them work both 15 and 17. Yeah, so that they can see the difference. And 17 is easier because you have to condense less information. You can incorporate much more of the original. Yeah. But again, you might want to just play with your students and expose them to different reading speeds, and then they can see what is feasible and what is not feasible, depending on how much they have to incorporate in their translation. Again, if you're working with other characters, traditionally 5 characters per second is what you would write in Japanese or in Chinese, though Netflix, for instance, now is pushing to 9 characters, nearly double. I'm making it faster. So you can see how the industry is changing, and the newcomers, OTT developers, are creating new guidelines that we didn't have before. And that comes usually with fighting and clashing, people that are not very happy on how things are done and they're changing too much and so on. Okay. Now, what I want to do with all these basics in subtitling, I'm gonna show you how to do a few subtitles only. Okay, and I'm gonna leave this one here, and I'm going to come to my platform here. I'm gonna be working with one platform, and I wanted to show you in here. No, it's not gonna let me until yeah, in here. You will have it in the PowerPoint. And I'm jumping a bit because I'll see that tomorrow. But in here, in this PowerPoint, you've got that this area, and you've got here the information, what I'm going to, this is the website, and you can ask for a free trial if you want to, and then you can practice what I'm doing now. And I'm giving you 2 sets of guidelines on step by step, what is it that you need to do. Okay, so this is the free trial. If you like it, or if you are already a professional and you're looking for a place to do, I was discussing this with the company, and you can have a discount until the end of this month. You've got there, if you approach them as, listen, I'm thinking about buying something here, they will give you a 25% discount. Yeah, if you wanted to. In the free one, I think it's for 1 week and allows you to play and see how things are done. Now, there are 2 little things that you need to bear in mind. One thing is when you work in here, to be able to take the most of the environment, you need to install a little thing which they called the Una agent. This is the icon that I've got here. Yeah, you install it, and I've give you a guideline on how to install it. It's very, very simple. You install it, and once you've got it installed, it disappears, and only when you activate it, it will be behind the scenes, so you don't see it. So now I don't have it activated. If I activate it, you will see it does something like this. It's loading, and it loads and goes down here. It takes a little while. Yeah, and that's it. It disappears, and you can see at the bottom of my screen here, that is the icon. That will allow my computer and the platform to be connected and help me do better things with my subtitles. Yeah, to use the sound wave and the shot change detection. Yeah, which I'm gonna show you now. So I've done that, and this is something that I recommend you do. You install it, and it's that simple. Once it's gone, that's it, you forget about it. And now, this is the platform where I can go in. So I'm gonna log in, and you're gonna see something slightly different, but basically you've got Translate Pro, Create, Review, and Burn and Encode. Okay, those are the 4 that I want to discuss with you. Today, I'm only paying attention to Create Pro. I'm going to do 3 subtitles. Yeah, I want to show you how easy to do it. I am now on this platform. I'm not on my computer anymore. This is all online, so it's not installed on my computer. Everything is in there. So if I close now and I go to, I fly to Kiev and I go to Alexander's office and I say, oh, listen, I need to finish. I can log from there and I log into all my material, and it's all in there. Or I go to a internet cafe, I can log in there. Or I go to my laptop, I can log from there, from anywhere in the world, from any computer. Everything is in there. It takes away the risk of incompatibilities, that you don't have it installed or whatever. So I'm going to show you now this one here, and I will discuss what the other ones are good for, and particularly for education, tomorrow. But this one here, I've got it. And if I just click in here, it tells me create a new project. I've got old ones, ignore, you won't see anything when you start. And I say, okay, create a new project, and I'm gonna call it Ukraine. Okay, and this is gonna be my project. Okay. One of the beauties of this program is that you can manipulate, you can customize all the the shortcuts. So you don't want to be with your mouse, play, stop, go here, go there. You want to have shortcuts so that you can produce. You don't have to get your hands away from the laptop or from your keyboard. Now, what I do, and this is what we've done in the industry for a long time, is I'll show you my keyboard. I'm using a desktop. So my keyboard here, you can see that on this part, I've got a small keyboard, which is what we call the numeric keypad. This is my video player, as if I was with video games. That's my video player. And then in here, that's my text. That's what I'm going to be writing my text. So what I have got is that number 5, I play my video. Number 4, you can see that there is an arrow going back. That's what I'm going to be moving, rewinding my video. Number 6, I'm going to be forwarding my video. The 0, that's going to be my timing. That's when I decide the start of my subtitle. And then the dot deal that I've got in my keyboard, that's the end of my subtitle. So I only need 5 shortcuts so that I never need to leave the keyboard. Yeah, and you can do it. You go here to the settings. You've got your hotkeys. Yeah, setting hotkeys, and then you edit them. Yeah, and I give you all this you've got in my easy guide. Yeah, I will open here very quickly. This is what I have. I've already sent you. Is this Create Pro? Yeah, and this is a step by step what I'm telling you. You know, when you go there, and then if you want to configure your hotkeys, you do this settings, hotkeys, you go to edit, you change, and blah, blah, blah. So all the information is here. So I'm only just showing you so that you know a little bit, but it's all very detailed in there. So you just edit, and then once you edit, you apply, and you've got it. Yeah. So I've closed there. And then for any particular project, then you need to tell how you want to work. So for this project, I want to say, okay, the general, I'm going to be working in English. But if you're working in Ukrainian, then you put Ukrainian. If you're going to be translated into German, then you put German. And then you will maximize the spell checker and everything that is got to do with German. Yeah. So you just choose here which language. The font by default, Arial. By default, Una's platform follows the patterns suggested by Netflix. So if you're happy with Netflix, then it will be the same. If you want to change, then you need to reconsider. So in here, it goes for Arial. Then the display, I've got 24, but I could do 30. It's got nothing to do with the final thing. It's only how I'm going to see them on my screen here, yeah, on the computer. It's not for anything else, but 24 is big enough, but you can do a bit bigger if you want. Then the screen here, I'm going to do maximum line length. How many characters per line maximum? Then I'm going to say, okay, I want to do like Netflix. What I'm going to do, no, 39. I'm not going to write more than 39. That's my maximum. If I do something wrong, alert me. Yeah. And then maximum per line, per subtitle, 2 lines. No more than 2 lines. Although if you're doing subtitles for deaf people, sometimes you can do 3 or you can do 4. Or if you are doing bilingual subtitles in Swedish and in Finnish, or in French and Flemish, then you can put 4, and then you write in French and in Flemish. So it depends on the circumstances of your country. The video here, it says this one is 30 frames here. It could be less, and I think mine is 25. Yeah. The reading speed, which is also important, by default 17. I think it's too high, and I'm gonna be working at 15 characters per second. And I click in here, please, yes, count the spaces. The blank spaces need to be counted as well. Yeah. And then I've got here information, minimum duration on the screen. Then I'm gonna say, okay, the minimum should be 1 second, and the maximum duration 6 seconds. Yeah, as I explained to you, that should be. Yeah? And then I apply. So on those parameters, anything that I do wrong, the computer is going to alert me. Okay, so now what I've got is this is what it looks. This area, all this area is going to be for my word processing, for my subtitles, and then here is for my video. And then at the bottom here is going to help me, is going to make me visualize the audio, plus also shot changes when the images are changing. And we'll explain tomorrow the need to take care of shot changes. But this is what the program is doing now, is going to do is scan the video and find all that information and make it visual for me, so that it will help me to speed up my spotting. Yeah. So in here now, I'm going to bring a video. So I've got here my media, and then I say, okay, I want a video. And then now it says here, analyze with Una's agent, which is the little plugin that I showed you earlier on. If you don't have it, or if you don't want to install it, you untick. But that means that you're not going to see anything here. This is going to be empty, and you're not going to see the audio, and you're not going to be helped by that information. So if you tick it and you've got the UNA agent, then I look for my video. Okay, it's gonna check it with UNA. And then this is my video here. And then there is my video. And you can see already in here, all this here is silence. It's flat, nobody's talking. So I can skip over that when I'm doing my subtitles. And I can see that they are talking here when the audio goes up. And then this orangey thing here means that there's going to be a shot change. The images are going to change in there, only there. All this is always the same image. There is changing. Yeah. So I'm going to do, actually, I don't want this video. Hold on. I'm going to use another video, which is easier to show you quickly. Open it went there. So I'll disregard this video and Ukraine, but this one here. Okay, so this is my video. I'm gonna play and I'm gonna do a few subtitles. You can see there the information here. So you can see, because nobody's talking, it's moving and nothing is happening there. But as soon as he starts talking, we'll be here. And I can see that is coming. He's gonna be talking soon.
I wonder what happened to the one from last year.
And that is silence. So I can see this could be good for a one subtitle. Yeah, because it's one full sentence. It's not too long. It's a long pause that comes afterwards. So I think that would be fine. I'll continue.
Each year we spend good money on these things. We come out here and the one from last year's gone.
That seems to be okay as well. There is a pause here, but it's a little pause. I'm not sure how long it is, but it's 9, second number 9 and second number 13 is going to be 4 seconds. And I said maximum is 6, so it could be okay. There's going to be a short change here, so my subtitle will have to appear afterwards. I don't want to have it there, so I can see there.
Well,
she appears, and then she starts
flowers
talking.
die, and the caretaker or somebody takes them away.
Yeah, and that is there. So I can follow my clip, but I think here I could do 3 subtitles, maybe 4 if I want to keep the silence there, but I'm going to do 3 subtitles. So I know if I go there, that's when it begins. And then I'm going to show you 2 ways of doing this. I can do it without listening. I can just say, okay, I can see the begins there. I can move it there. And then I say, okay, here I'll start my subtitle because I can see that is in there. If I want my subtitle in, as I told you, I use my numeric keypad and I do 0. And then once I press 0, just look, here there is nothing. Yeah, my subtitle number 1 here, there is nothing because I haven't done anything. But if I now say, okay, here, which is second 5, frame 4, I want to start my subtitle. So if I press now the 0, then you can see that here I've got that time coincide with this time, and that's why my subtitle is going to appear. And then if I continue and I say, okay, and I'm going to leave it until there, because that's when he stops talking, I move it there. This is the end of my subtitle, and I press for the end, delt, point, delt, and this is the end of my subtitle. So this is what my subtitle is going to occupy. It's going to begin here. It's going to end there. So it's going to be on the screen 2 seconds, 4 frames, and then I do my translation. Now, pardon my French, because my translation is not going to make much sense, but I'm doing there. And then you can see the program is already alerting me, and lots of information. It's giving me lots of information. On the top line, it says 40 characters. On the bottom line, 16. Remember, I said maximum 39. That's why the final one is red. Yeah, that F there is red because I've gone too much there. So that's telling me, okay, no, I should go a bit lower. Then I've got now 36 on the top, 16 at the bottom, 53. But this means that because it's only 2 seconds, that's too many characters per second. It's 24. And remember, we said 15 should be what I should allow. In fact, the program is telling me here, if it was 13, this little black thing here That's what it should be ideal. 32 characters. That should be my ideal translation. And I've written so far 52. So that's why it's going red. And it's telling me if it's red, this is really bad. But if I'm not too bad, yeah, that I'm getting closer, then you can see it goes, okay, here, and it goes, I'll delete one, and then it goes orange. So it's not red. I've done a little bit more. I'm told to do 15, but I've done 15.2. So it's going to go orange. But if got more, it got something else. Yeah, so I can say, okay, fine. Now my translation is fine. I'll put my full stop in here, and then I'll return, and it's my second subtitle. Yeah, and my second subtitle is here. I can do the same. I can say, okay, here is where it starts. So I go there, just check, and I say 0, insert, and then you can see 821, 821 coincides. And then what I say is, okay, I'm going to do it until here. That's the end of my subtitle because I can see, and this is going to be the end. I do del here, and it tells me, comes here 821, finishes 1310, 414, and then again, ideally, it should be 68 characters written in there and more or less here. So I'm going to write my text here. Yeah, and I'm going to do it differently. So of course, it's not going to alert me until I write a lot more because I've got more time. So it's allowing me to write, and now I've written 15.3. I can say, okay, fine, no, there. I am doing 14 characters, 14. So that's my translation. I'm happy or not happy or whatever. Yeah, and then once I am at the end, I return, and this is my third subtitle, and so on. Yeah, so I only need my 5 keys. If I went here and I want to do something, if I go, say, I wonder there, and I go with my number 4, can you hear? So if I do a little bit more, and let me see, I'll put it a bit higher in here. So if I go here and I am, after he has started, if I wanted to make really sure where I am, I can do number 4. This is called noise scrubbing. So I'm going back and I can still hear noise. I can hear him talking. And there is silence. So I know now that that is. So if I think, okay, now I don't hear anything, I could just say, okay, fine. Here is my subtitle. Here is what I want to start. And it's my start. Yeah, and I can do that, and I can move my video forward, back or forward, yeah, one by one, depending on how I want. And now what I want to do is just see what I've done. Yeah, and I can do that. I can show you like this or the other way. So if I play now.
I wonder what happened to the one from last year. Each year we spend good money on these things. We come out here and the one from last year's gone.
Well, the flowers died.
Yeah, and then you continue with however many subtitles you've got to do. Now, if I now finish and close, yeah, and I'll save it the first time, although it saves every 2 minutes. Okay, every 2 minutes is being saved on the platform. But you know, I'm a bit panicky sometimes. I always save in and control save or whatever. But if I save it now and I say, okay, fine, I'm gone, and I leave it, and I don't need to download anything. I don't need to do absolutely anything. I'll just go say I just log out. I come tomorrow and I come to my login area. This is my login. I'll go here. I'll go to my Create Pro, and I've got my Ukraine. And when I open it, I've got my 2 subtitles here, and it links to the video where I left it. And then I can continue with my work from there. So everything is kept here and is done there. And as I said, you can use all this here for the benefit of synchronizing and making it really, really accurate in the presentation. Okay, it's that simple. If you follow the one guide that I've given you, the agent is only so that you can activate all this information. Okay, the visual information. And the other guidelines is on how to set up the environment so that then you can start producing your own subtitles. Yeah, and literally takes 10 minutes. You only need to do the settings, the hotkeys, 5 I would recommend to do, which is play and stop your video, going back, going forward, and then indicating beginning of my subtitle, end of my subtitle. Yeah, you don't need more than that. With that, you are set to start producing your subtitles. Okay. Now I am aware of the time, which is 3 minutes past the hour. So what I would like to suggest to you is on the PowerPoint, you've got here the homework, which is I'm asking you to watch. This is a very small scene called Encounter. That's my title. From the film Is a Wonderful Life. It's very short. It lasts 2 minutes, I think, or a minute and a bit. So it's very, very short. And you can find it on this YouTube link. And what I want you to do.
Yeah, maybe you could share the link in the chat. It
okay.
would be much more convenient.
Okay, I'll do that. But anyway, this is the link. So you watch it, copy. And then what I want you to do is decide, you just listen to it and decide how many subtitles will you put on that video. How many times will you send text on the screen? It doesn't matter whether it is 1 line or 2 lines. Yeah, but I want to know how many, Netflix call them events. How many texts or how many times will you be interfering with the images? Okay. And then on the chat here, okay, when I've got this, okay, with everyone, and I think I've shared it now. So everybody now has got the link. So just listen to this, and then tomorrow I'll finalize a little bit more on the subtitling, although the things you can find from guidelines and so on. And I will tell you, we will discuss how to, what sort of activities to produce, what sort of lengths of the videos, if you need to do the assessment, what sort of assessment. I will tell you what I do and what other people do and how you can arrange that. I will show you as well some tests that some companies have to give jobs to newcomers, so that you can, if they are testing them in the industry on these strategies, maybe it will be a good idea for you as well to produce or to create some exercises along those lines, so that when they do a professional test, they already, they've experienced a little bit what is in there. And I promise as well that tomorrow we'll have time for questions. That's why we will be sending another link for the seminar. So it will be slightly different, so that you can participate, and then I can see you as well, and you can be asking me questions throughout. So it'll be a bit more dynamic in that sense.
Muchas gracias, Jorge.
Oh, I forgot to say that. Duše ďakuju. I learned to say that one, but de nada.
Yeah, but it's rather for you. It was very interesting, and thank you a lot for these nice examples and for this practical part where you have shown everything. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow's class, this continuation.
Me too. Yeah, me too. I'm really looking forward to that. And yes, all the material will be available, and I will really strong candidates to take advantage of the technology out there so that they can practice and produce their own subtitles. Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. So we want to thank, first of all, Jorge, to you, then the audience for being so patient and attentive. And of course, one more time, remind that tomorrow we'll have another event, mostly for those who want to develop a course of audiovisual translation. So we'll send you the link for the event tomorrow morning. And see you tomorrow.